They're evil. They are actively doing evil. So treat them like the evil that they are.
The right to exist argument has been used now to the point where what it's going to mean is that the Israel you're talking about will include the annexed and illegally occupied West Bank. It's very interesting, the Israeli government has never said where it thinks the border of Israel really ought to be and what it would settle for. It would be an immense help if it tells us where it thinks Israel's boundary should be. Every other country does do that.
It's time to stop pretending otherwise. It's time to be ruthless and time to afford them the same amount of grace that they give to their Palestinian victims, because they are only going to get more and more ruthless with their victims if you don't.
What's up, welcome. We were listening to this at the beginning. The boiler room in Palestine. 6 years ago. Making her boiler room debut on home turf is Palestine's techno queen, Sama Abdullati. I wonder if she's still alive. I'm sure she is. I'm sure she made it out. Yeah. Still alive. Thank God. Jesus. I'd like to interview her. 250,000 followers, she's not gonna. Wow. I just got chills. Chills, bro. Anyway, we'll start with headlines and then go into more specific stories. I need some coffee. Holy shit.
Now, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israeli forces moved deeper into Gaza City Wednesday as Israeli leaders dismissed a statement from Hamas that the group is willing to release its remaining hostages in exchange for an end to Israel's assault. This comes as Palestinian health officials report Israeli forces have killed at least 84 people and wounded 338 others over the past 24 hours. In Gaza City, Palestinians mourn their loved ones killed in Israeli airstrikes.
He was martyred. He was hit by a strike inside his room. They killed him with his wife and children. They erased them all. No one is left for me. Yesterday he was with me. He told me, I have your back. I will not leave you. Whatever happens to you happens to me. But no, he's gone and left me alone. To whom are you leaving me, my brother Mohammed? To whom are you leaving me?
In Israel, far-right minister Bezalel Smotrich on Wednesday proposed annexing 82% of the occupied West Bank. The plan would effectively end prospects for a future Palestinian state. In response to the United Arab Emirates said any efforts to annex the West Bank would cross a red line that could unravel the Abraham Accords that normalize relations between Israel and some Arab nations. Meanwhile, the Washington Post is reporting a post-war plan for Gaza circulating within the Trump administration would relocate the enclave's 2 million residents. Gaza would essentially be turned into a trusteeship run by the United States for at least a decade, where Palestinians who own land will be offered a digital token in exchange for rights to redevelop their property. Palestinians could redeem the token to move outside the Strip or into an apartment in one of the new cities to be created under the plan. The proposal was reportedly developed by some of the same Israelis who created the shadowy Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, with contributions from the Boston Consulting Group. Scotland's top official announced Wednesday his government's paused funding to weapons manufacturers that sell arms to Israel as he ordered the Palestinian flag to be raised above Scottish government buildings. First Minister John Swinney made the announcement as members of the Scottish Parliament voted 65-24 to recognize the state of Palestine, urging the UK government to follow suit.
In the face of genocide, there can be no business as usual. We will pause new awards of public money to arms companies whose products or services are provided to countries where there is plausible evidence of genocide being committed by that country. That will include Israel.
On Capitol Hill, 2 U.S. military veterans were removed from a Senate hearing Wednesday after they accused committee members of complicity in genocide in Gaza. Former Army intelligence officer Josephine Guilbeault was led away in handcuffs alongside retired Green Beret Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. He worked as a security contractor for the militarized U.S. and Israeli-backed so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation before blowing the whistle on the group's deadly attacks on Palestinian civilians seeking food.
Are being arrested right now for interrupting a foreign affairs hearing on nominations because the U.S. is complicit in genocide. They are complicit in the slaughter of babies.
When the United States Congress comes after veterans, they will come after you. Every American sitting at home right now needs to realize that you are paying for a genocide.
To see our interview with Anthony Aguilar, go to democracynow.org. Senior Democratic leaders.
Oh, that was Anthony Aguilar being arrested? They talking about the Greater Israel Project here?
Palestinian health officials report Israeli forces have killed at least 84 people and wounded 338 others over the past 24 hours. In Gaza City, Palestinians mourn their loved ones killed in Israeli airstrikes.
He was martyred. He was hit by a strike inside his room. They killed him with his wife and children. They erased them all. No one is left for me. Yesterday he was with me. He told me, I have your back. I will not leave you. Whatever happens to you, happens to me. But no, he's gone and left me alone. To whom are you leaving me, my brother Mohammed? To whom are you leaving me?
In Israel, far-right Minister Bezalel Smotrich on Wednesday proposed annexing 82% of the occupied West Bank. The plan would effectively end prospects for a future Palestinian state. In response to the United Arab Emirates said any efforts to annex the West Bank would cross a red line that could unravel the Abraham Accords that normalize relations between Israel and some Arab nations. Meanwhile, the Washington Post is reporting a post-war plan for Gaza circulating within the Trump administration would relocate the enclave's 2 million residents. Gaza would essentially be turned into a trusteeship run by the United States for at least a decade, where Palestinians who own land will be offered a digital token in exchange for rights to redevelop their property. Palestinians could redeem the token to move outside the Strip or into an apartment in one of the new cities to be created under the plan. The proposal was reportedly developed by some of the same Israelis who created the shadowy Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, with contributions from the Boston Consulting Group. Scotland's top official announced Wednesday his government's paused funding to weapons manufacturers that sell arms to Israel as he ordered the Palestinian flag to be raised above Scottish government buildings. First Minister John Swinney made the announcement as members of the Scottish Parliament voted 65-24 to recognize the state of Palestine, urging the UK government to follow suit.
In the face of genocide, there can be no business as usual. We will pause new awards of public money to arms companies whose products or services are provided to countries where there is plausible evidence of genocide being committed by that country. That will include Israel.
On Capitol Hill, 2 U.S. military veterans were removed from a Senate hearing Wednesday after they accused committee members of complicity in genocide in Gaza. Former Army intelligence officer Josephine Guilbeault was led away in handcuffs alongside retired Green Beret Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. He worked as a security contractor for the militarized U.S. and Israeli-backed so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation before blowing the whistle on the group's deadly attacks on Palestinian civilians seeking food.
Are being arrested right now for interrupting a foreign affairs hearing on nominations because the U.S. is complicit in genocide. They are complicit in the slaughter of babies.
When the United States Congress comes after veterans, they will come after you. Every American sitting at home right now needs to realize that you are paying for a genocide.
To see our interview with Anthony Aguilar, go to democracynow.org. Senior Democratic leaders are asking the Trump administration to reveal details about who exactly is funding the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. In a letter to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, and Office of Management Budget Director Russ Vought, Senators Elizabeth Warren, Chris Van Hollen, and Peter Welch write, quote, the State Department should immediately cease funding GHF and transfer or restore funding to experienced aid organizations given the strong and growing evidence that GHF is failing to accomplish its humanitarian mission, unquote. According to the United Nations, nearly 1,000 Palestinians have died near GHF sites since the group started operations in May. Survivors of sexual abuse by Jeffrey Epstein gathered on Capitol Hill Wednesday to share their stories as they called on Congress to release files and documents related to the serial sex offender. This is Epstein survivor Lisa Phillips.
Congress must choose. Will you continue to protect predators, or will you finally protect survivors? And also, I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know.
All 212 House Democrats are expected to vote in favor of a measure to compel the Justice Department to release the Epstein files, meaning 6 Republicans would need to join them to pass the resolution. So far, 4 Republicans have signed on. They're Kentucky Congressmember Thomas Massie, Georgia's Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace of South Carolina, and Lauren Boebert of Colorado. Meanwhile, President Trump's turned up pressure on Republicans to let the story die. Trump was asked Wednesday about the demands of Epstein survivors.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given, but it's really a Democrat hoax.
After headlines, we'll play more of Wednesday's testimony from Jeffrey Epstein survivors, who are both Democrat and Republican, and we'll be joined in Washington, D.C. by Congress.
So incoherent, like, is it a hoax, or was it all released and it's all being taken care of transparently? Which is it?
Member Ro Khanna, who co-sponsored the House resolution to release the Epstein files with Republican Congressmember Massie. President Trump's expected to ask the Supreme Court to overturn the $5 million verdict in the civil suit that found he sexually abused writer E. Jean Carroll. Carroll's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, said, quote, "We do not believe President Trump will be able to present any legal issues in the Carroll cases that merit review by the United States Supreme Court," unquote. In 2023, Carroll testified Trump had violently attacked her in a dressing room at a department store in the mid-1990s. She also won $83.3 million in a defamation case against Trump after he called her a liar. Florida plans to become the first state to end all vaccine mandates for children to attend school, including for preventable diseases such as measles, mumps, chickenpox, polio, and hepatitis. On Wednesday, Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo said that the vaccine requirement is, quote, wrong and drips with disdain and slavery, unquote. The American Medical Association responded to Florida's plan to end vaccine mandates, saying it would, quote, undermine decades of public health progress, unquote. According to the World Health Organization, vaccines have saved the lives of 154 million people globally over the past half-century, many of them infants and children. Meanwhile, California, Oregon, and Washington have announced they're forming a new health alliance to provide unified vaccine recommendations after Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. withdrew federal COVID vaccine recommendations for pregnant women and healthy children back in May. He will testify before Congress today. More than 1,000 current and former workers at the Department of Health and Human Services sent a letter to Congress demanding the resignation of RFK Jr.
God, it's like a bad car commercial.
Over his pseudoscientific claims and his attacks on public health. This comes just days after the New York Times published a joint op-ed by 9 former directors of the Centers for Disease Control headlined, "We ran the CDC. Kennedy is endangering every American's health." They write, quote, "This is a time to rally to protect the health of every American. Congress must exercise its oversight authority over health and human services," unquote. A federal judge in Boston has ruled in favor of Harvard, saying the Trump administration broke the law, violating the university's free speech rights when canceling nearly $2.2 billion in research grants. In her ruling, Judge Allison Burroughs wrote, quote, "A review of the administrative record makes it difficult to conclude anything other than the government used anti-Semitism as a smokescreen for a targeted, ideologically motivated assault on this country's premier universities," unquote. Harvard was the only university to sue the Trump administration after it targeted the school's research funding over claims of anti-Semitism. The Trump administration also tried to prevent Harvard from enrolling foreign students and threatened to revoke its tax-exempt status. The White House says it plans to appeal the decision. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is defending the Pentagon's decision to strike a boat in the Caribbean Sea, killing 11 people. Speaking to reporters Wednesday, Rubio said, quote, "Instead of interdicting it on the president's orders, we blew it up and it'll happen again," he said. The White House has failed to provide any evidence backing its claims the boat was carrying illegal drugs from Venezuela. Legal experts warn the strike may have violated international law and the U.S. Constitution, which grants Congress rather than the president the power to declare war. And in Italy, audience members at the Venice Film Festival rose for a record 22-minute standing ovation Wednesday after the premiere of The Voice of Hind Rajab, a docudrama about the real-life story of a Palestinian girl whose killing by Israeli forces in Gaza in January 2024 reverberated around the world. The film, by Tunisian director Khalfa Ben-Hania, incorporates real audio recordings of phone calls from Hind as she was trapped under Israeli fire for hours, begging to be rescued from a car where her aunt, uncle, and 3 cousins lay dead. Hind was ultimately killed along with 2 Palestinian paramedics dispatched to rescue her. Ahead of the film's premiere, actress Saja Kilani read a statement on behalf of the cast and crew.
On behalf of all of us actors and in the name of the entire team, we ask, isn't it enough? Enough of the mass killing, the starvation, the dehumanization, the destruction, the ongoing occupation. The voice of Hind Rajab does not need our defense. This film is not an opinion or a fantasy. It is anchored in truth. Hind's story carries the weight of an entire people.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org.
I hope they treated her story with honor and respect. I don't think it'll age well, but I think it's a timely. It's just. It's not like a dingo ate my baby, you know what I mean? It's like a genocide, you know? So are you gonna make the Schindler's List of the genocide of our age? It's a huge undertaking. Any dramatizations of this, my connection speed is so bad. It's fucking not smooth at all. Is this even watchable? I mean... Connectivity is just so bad. I don't... let me look at an old stream and see if this is even worth, like, continuing, you know? Because it's different if you can look at it after the fact and there's no interruptions. No, even after the fact, there's stuttering. China at a parade. Alright, moving on. Dude, get Scott Ritter off my fucking timeline, dude. Scott Ritter is a piece of... I need to go set up, like, in the shadow of the router, or have a direct line connecting to it. God damn. I don't even have the ability to plug into one. The fuck am I gonna do? Hey, what's up? We're watching headlines before diving into more specific stories, but I'm pouting because of my internet connection. I'm thinking about moving my whole setup upstairs to where the router is. Because I bet there were interruptions even in what I was explaining to you just now. But I'm glad you're here nonetheless. Well, if you have some spare time, have a banger vid. Oh shit. Well, put it in the chat now, and I'll or should we just watch it now? Fuck. I want to go upstairs now. And then no audio is clear, it's just the video. Okay. Oh, you said my audio is alright, but it's just the video that's stuttering. Still not good enough. Let's go for a ride. Closer to the router. Oh shit, there it is.
Today, we are going to discuss some.
Yo, I know this guy. I just watched one of his videos. Oh, dude, yeah, I'll watch this whole fucking thing. I don't give a shit. I watched his video on. He was basically saying, like, he had to write genocide on the board because he couldn't, he wasn't allowed to say it. And his whole point was that, like, Israel is trying to divide the world in order to conquer it. Or something like that. I don't... let me get closer to the router. He's awesome. He's really awesome. I thought his chalkboard was real at first. Fucking... it is a nice smart board. Damn, I don't know if this made a difference at all. I'm within spitting distance of the router. Pisses me off, dude. Bro, this YouTube series is fucking insane, someone says. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch this. Check this person out. Sama Abdul Hadi. Watch this.
The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Welcome to our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel.
First, let's take a look at the news. Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. Israel has killed at least 571 Palestinians and injured nearly 2,320 between August 27th and September 3rd, according to official records from the Ministry of Health in Gaza. The Israeli army has committed massacres in Gaza City and northern Gaza areas using airstrikes, fire belts, drone attacks, and bomb-filled remote-controlled vehicles to destroy residential buildings, ambulances, and tent shelters of displaced Palestinian families. On Saturday, August 30th, Israel bombed a bakery and a tent shelter in Al Nasser neighborhood of Gaza City, killing at least 12 children and adults as they were waiting for bread. Journalist Mustafa Sarsour captured video of a man in agony as he mourned over the bodies of 3 small children. Al Nasser neighborhood was bombed again on Monday, September 1st. Reporter Mahmoud Abu Salama reported from Al Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, where bodies of Palestinians were brought in by their families on carts and stretchers. Another massacre of children happened on Tuesday, September 2nd, when at least 5 children were killed while waiting for water in Al-Mawasi in western Gaza, an area the Israeli army had designated as a so-called safe zone, but which it has bombed relentlessly over the course of the last 23 months. Mahmoud Basal, the spokesperson for Gaza's civil defense, said that the children, quote, were standing in line to fill up water in the Al-Mawasi area, which has been described as safe, when the occupation forces directly targeted them, turning their search for life into a new massacre. Euromed Human Rights Monitor stated on Wednesday that its field team reviewed several videos published by Israeli soldiers showing them, quote, shooting at Palestinians in displacement camps for amusement or to bet on their accuracy. This demonstrates that the shooting is not driven by any specific purpose or military necessity, but rather reflects a deliberate policy aimed at causing maximum civilian deaths and destruction, while denying Palestinians any sense of safety, Euromed added. The group documented the killing of Ahlam Ra'ed Faiz al-Sha'ir, 26, a mother of two, by Israeli army gunfire on the morning of September 1st while she was making tea in her tent in Al-Mawasi. Al-Sha'ir's father-in-law told Euromed Monitor's team that his daughter-in-law was preparing tea for her two children, Ayman and Karam, when an Israeli quadcopter shot her in the head in front of them. He said his two grandchildren are now orphans. Humanitarian activist Saeed Shoaib captured this clip moments after Israeli forces committed a massacre in the Burej refugee camp in central Gaza on Sunday. The screams of children can be heard as the camera shows images of shredded bodies and injured children, which have been blurred. Israel is using incendiary bombs and grenades to set fires to buildings and tent shelters. Instagram user Ahab Noor filmed footage of one such attack earlier this week with enormous plumes of flames and smoke enveloping a residential building. Israeli forces set the tents of displaced families ablaze on Wednesday, September 3rd, by dropping grenades on shelters in the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood of Gaza City. A 60-year-old mother of five told an international news agency that Sheikh Radwan, quote, is being burned upside down. The occupation destroyed houses, burned tents, and drones played audio messages ordering people to leave the area. Quote, if the takeover of Gaza City isn't stopped, we might die, and we are not going to forgive anyone who stands and watches without doing anything to prevent our death, she said. Our contributor Asim An-Nabi in Gaza City wrote on Tuesday that, quote, every day and for 2 weeks now, several massive explosions have been occurring, which the Gazawis have come to call nasif, demolitions, where columns of smoke mixed with thick dust rise up. And while we cannot see the rubble of our homes and neighborhoods that are being demolished, the force of the explosion is enough to make a piece of your heart explode completely as soon as another part of Gaza explodes, Asim wrote. Israel used incendiary bombs to target cars and ambulances near a clinic in the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood on Tuesday. Civil defense worker Mohammed Abu Luay filmed his colleagues as they scrambled for buckets of water, trying to extinguish the flames.
ايش كمان حريق برا العياده بقول هاي كمان حريق قدام حريق مكاس كمان طياره في كمان حريق رمض كمان هاي يلا حماد فوق في جده من عبي ميه بنحاول نطفيها نلحقها راح الطياره عندك جده مي راحت
It looks like a firework being dropped. Like all the incendiary sort of embers of a firework just being dropped onto a car. It was really just...
هاي جردة عبينا مي بسرعة خليه يشبع عبي يا أخي أيوة عبي يا معتز ضخ مية ما نفسه إسعاف هو خليه قول له ضخ راح يلف المطاف
That was the civil defense on Tuesday in Sheikh Radwan, Gaza City. Earlier that day, journalist Mahmoud Abu Salama reported from Sheikh Radwan to document the advance of the Israeli army. Abu Salama says that during the invasion, along with detonating bomb-filled vehicles to destroy buildings, Israeli snipers have been targeting Palestinians on the streets. He says, quote, as you can see, bullets are hitting civilians and gunfire is being fired from vehicles and snipers stationed around Sheikh Radwan, he said. While she was reporting live earlier this week, Al Jazeera journalist Noor Abu Raqba broke down in tears talking about her mother being forcibly displaced amidst the annihilation of Gaza City. She says, quote, my mom doesn't know where to go or where the next destination will be. The situation is extremely difficult. The occupation is trying to split the city of Gaza from its homeowners. It's trying to encircle them in the west of Gaza, showing them no mercy. It is shelling them wherever they are. It is shelling them in the tents. It is shelling them on the beach. Her colleague Hamam Yunus captured this clip.
ميداني صعب جدا. الاحتلال يحاول ان يفرغ مدينه غزه من سكانها، يحاول ان يكدسهم في غرب غزه ولكن لا يرحمهم، يقصفهم اينما كان، يقصفهم في الخيام، قصفهم في الشاطئ الذي يعتبر غرب غزه، ليس في جنوب مدينه غزه كالزيتون وليس في شمال شرق غزه.
Noor Abu Rokba. Israel is determined to wipe Gaza City off the map, Euromed Human Rights Monitor declared on September 1st, and it is using...
There are so many people on the beach right now. The fact that they're shelling the beach. I have no words.
An arsenal of some of the most destructive tools ever built, with complete impunity. Quote, the Israeli army is destroying about 300 residential units daily in Gaza City and Jabalia, using around 15 robots carrying nearly 100 tons of explosives, Euromeds.
You want to know why? It's robots and not live personnel rigging these explosions? Because of the resistance.
Stated. These bombings are taking place at an unprecedented pace, aimed at destroying Gaza City and displacing its residents as part of a dangerous...
That they'll run out of those trucks eventually. They only have a finite amount of them.
Escalation of the ongoing genocide against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip for nearly 23 months. Euromed Monitor's field team documented the Israeli army's intensified use of armored, explosive-laden robots to achieve their goal of completely erasing one of Palestine's oldest and largest cities. Euromed says that at the current rate, the rest of the city could be destroyed within 2 months, a timeline that may shorten further given the Israeli army's massive firepower and the absence of any pressure to halt its crimes against Palestinians. After preliminary assessments of the robot attacks, Euromed Monitor estimates that each robot can completely or partially destroy around 20 housing units. This will soon leave hundreds of thousands of people without homes or shelters, forcing them to flee once again in deadly conditions, without even the bare minimum for survival. The robots used in the bombing are essentially Israeli military vehicles, such as outdated M113 armored personnel carriers, loaded with tons of explosives and remotely piloted through civilian neighborhoods. They are directed to explode in carefully selected locations to maximize destruction. In some cases, the robot is not rigged to detonate, but is fitted with large boxes of explosives that are unloaded at the target site, after which the vehicle is returned to base for reuse in other operations. This reflects an organized military strategy aimed at systematically destroying residential neighborhoods and maximizing the scale of devastation, Euromed stated. However, the rescue workers and civil defense crews say that they are continuing to use all available tools to continue their work protecting their community. Mohammed Abu Luai, the civil defense worker who I mentioned earlier, made this video explaining how he and his colleagues managed to keep saving lives under the most unbearable conditions. He says, quote, have you ever asked yourself how we, throughout the entire period of war, how we saved thousands of lives and retrieved dozens of martyrs from underneath the rubble? Let me show you how we work with the equipment. Of course, the equipment is very simple and light, consisting of work gloves, a spade, a shovel, a bolt cutter, and a sledgehammer. If there is a ceiling...
He's the most well-equipped I've seen. He's got pickaxe. He's got a pickaxe and a sledgehammer, shovels. We saw another guy showing his, gardening trowel that he had for excavating bodies out of the rubble.
And there are people underneath the rubble. We would have to break the ceiling so we can rescue the civilians. There are big and small cutters, big and small hammers. Give them to any country in the world and they would tell you it's impossible for them to work with these tools. But here in Gaza, nothing is impossible. With the power of God first and the high morale of our men second, we work with the simple equipment all the time. Here is Gaza, a symbol of pride, where nothing is impossible. Meanwhile, Israeli soldiers working with U.S. mercenary forces continue to trap, abduct, hunt, and kill Palestinians seeking aid at the private Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites every day. The Palestinian...
It's so insulting to a group of people. That their only point of pride that they have left is their resilience. What pride does the rest of the world have in comparison? Nothing. Nothing in comparison to this. Compared to the Palestinians in Yemen and Iran, it's cowardice. Yemen is leading the world by example.
Ministry of Health in Gaza reported that since May 27th, when the GHF sites opened, until today, at least 2,339 Palestinians have been killed and more than 17,000 injured while trying to obtain meager amounts of food aid. This week, Instagram user Ehab Noor filmed himself at a GHF site under relentless fire while trying to obtain a bag of flour for his family. A group of experts at the United Nations, including Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in Palestine, Francesca Albanese, and Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Michael Fakhri, condemned the ongoing enforced disappearing of starving Palestinians at the GHF sites, urging Israel to end its, quote, heinous crime against an already vulnerable population. Reports of enforced disappearances targeting starving civilians seeking their basic right to food is not only shocking, but amounts to torture. Using food as a tool to conduct targeted and mass disappearances needs to end now, the experts said. In late August, the rights group Defense for Children International Palestine reported that 5 Palestinian boys between the ages of 12 and 16 remain missing in separate incidents between late June and early August. DCIP says it interviewed the boys' families who have continually searched hospitals and morgues for their sons' bodies and have found no signs of them. Each of the boys disappeared while in the Zikim border area, located in North Gaza, where aid trucks cross into Gaza. The families fear their children have been abducted and disappeared by Israeli forces. Ayed Abu Aktesh, Accountability Program Director at DCIP, said, quote, Israeli forces are shooting, detaining, and disappearing Palestinian children seeking aid in Gaza. Israeli forces have refused to disclose the numbers, names, and whereabouts of Palestinian children from Gaza in military custody, and these children have had no contact with the outside world. We have more than 2 decades of evidence indicating that Israeli forces torture Palestinian children in military detention. All of these children must be released and reunited with their families immediately. As the Electronic Intifada reported in August, a group of children who were kidnapped in late June by Israeli forces at a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation site in Rafah, southern Gaza, were released a month later. They described their brutal torture and detention inside Israel's Sde Teiman concentration camp, where they were interrogated, beaten, and psychologically and physically tortured. Children and adults...
Sde Teiman, if you're not familiar, is one of the most... It's like the Israeli Abu Ghraib, essentially. The most notorious Israeli prison. Let's hear Nora say the name of it again. Sde Teiman.
In Rafah, southern Gaza, were released a month later. They described their brutal torture and detention inside Israel's Sde Teiman concentration camp, where they were interrogated, beaten, and psychologically and physically tortured. Children and adults alike are continuing to die of starvation across Gaza. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, this week stated that every single child in Gaza under 5 years old, more than 320,000 children, is at risk of acute malnutrition. On Wednesday, the Ministry of Health in Gaza reported that 6 deaths from starvation were recorded in a 24-hour period, including 1 child, bringing the total number of recorded starvation deaths to 367, including 131 children. Since the announcement 2 weeks ago by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, the Health Ministry says that 89 deaths, including 16 children, have been recorded. The Gaza Government Media Office stated on Monday, September 1st, that still only 15% of the necessary amount of trucks have entered Gaza. Looting and theft by Israel-backed armed gangs continue, the media office reports, and Israel has prevented the entry of 430 basic and vital food items, such as eggs, meat, fish, cheese, and other dairy products, fruits and vegetables, and nutritional supplements required for pregnant and nursing mothers. Israel assassinated at least 2 journalists in Gaza this week. On Sunday, August 31st, Islam Muharib Abed, who worked as a reporter for Al-Quds Al-Yom satellite channel, was killed in an attack on her apartment in Gaza City. On Tuesday, September 2nd, photojournalist Rasmi Jihad Salem was killed. He worked for the Al-Manara media company, Press TV, and Al-Alam TV. The Shahab news agency reported that he was killed by Israeli shelling in Gaza City. The Gaza Government Media Office says that at least 248 reporters and media workers have been killed by Israel since October 2023. Israeli forces once again bombed the inside walls of Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir Balah on September 1st for the 14th time since October 2023, according to the Gaza Government Media Office. Israel bombed a tent for displaced persons inside the walls of the hospital grounds, specifically near the hospital's outpatient clinic, the media office added. Quote, "This resulted in injuries at the site of the bombing, material damage, and the immediate threat of death to dozens of patients inside the hospital." In Gaza City, reporter Saeed Hasballah filmed a low-flying quadcopter drone hovering over the Al-Ahli Arab Hospital on Wednesday. At Al-Shifa Hospital, also in Gaza City, emergency room Dr. Farhan Abdulaziz described the total destruction of hospital buildings. He walked around the nearby cemetery where patients were buried with the headboards of their hospital beds, serving as tombstones.
Standing outside Shifa Hospital, and as you can see behind me, this is one side of the building completely destroyed. Blasted the walls through and then set on fire. Patients were inside that were burned alive. There was, of course, killing of patients and their families. And right outside, on the side of the hospital, you find this graveyard. And even though it's been months, you still find the smell of the dead bodies for a few reasons. One, normally we put the bodies in cement graves. These are shallow graves without any of that capability. The bodies are put right on the ground. But one of the things that breaks my heart is that you see behind me, you can see my left, immediately behind me, and the third, 3 different parts of the hospital beds. The back part of beds that literally in residency we would rush to rapid responses and take those off to intubate a patient and save their life. Literally we would take that off to have access to the patient's head and save their life. And now you see it's a marker of death here at Shifa Hospital in Gaza, where they're using literally the markers of hospital beds to mark the graves of patients and families that were murdered, massacred by the Israeli army when they came here and killed how many people they killed and imprisoned others and took them to the torture camps. It's such a sad moment in history, but a mark that we should not forget, the reality of this Israeli occupation.
That was Dr. Farhan Abdulaziz. The lawyer for Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, the pediatrician and director of Kamal Adwan Hospital in North Gaza, who was abducted by Israeli forces at the end of December 2024, was able to visit her client on August 28th.
It's one of the most dystopian things I've ever seen in my fucking life. The headboard of a medical bed, like, being your headstone. Because you were murdered inside of a hospital. The murdering of hospital patients has been so frequent that get things like that. Holy shit, that's fucked up, dude. And like, how long will those graves even be there? You know, before it's just turned into a parking lot by the Israelis.
Gid Qassem said that her client, Dr. Abu Safiya, and his nephew are both being held in the Ofer military prison. They are both suffering from scabies and other skin infections, as the Israeli prison guards are forcing them to wear the same clothes every day and are only allowed infrequent 2-minute baths. Abu Safia and his nephew have both lost a third of their body weight and are being held in cells without access to sunlight. They are allowed outside only 30 minutes a month, she said. Dr. Abu Safia gave his lawyer the following message to the world, quote, "I entered in the name of humanity, and I will leave in the name of humanity. I am the one who was abducted from inside the hospital. We will remain on our land and continue to provide healthcare services to the people, God willing, even from a tent."
30 minutes of sunlight per month is like... At that point, it's just torture to even have it dangled above your head, you know? Jesus Christ.
Meanwhile, doctors and staff at Al-Quds Hospital in Gaza City, together with the Palestine Red Crescent Society, announced that against all odds, they have successfully reactivated the cardiac catheterization clinic this week. The Red Crescent said that in a 48-hour period, medical teams successfully performed 3 cardiac catheterization procedures, with 3 more scheduled, despite the dire conditions and the shortage of essential medicines and critical medical supplies. This achievement, they say, is especially significant in light of the continued closure of border crossings, which prevents thousands of patients from traveling outside the Strip for treatment. In related news, the Hind Rajab Foundation announced that along with the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, they submitted a formal complaint to the International Criminal Court regarding the massacre at Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis on August 25th. The attack, as we reported last week, killed 22 civilians, including 5 journalists, 3 hospital staff, 1 doctor, a civil defense worker, and 1 child, 14-year-old Rayyan Omar Mahmoud Abu Omar. More than 50 others were injured in what can only be described as a deliberate double-tap strike carried out with full knowledge of the civilian presence, the group stated. Lieutenant Colonel Bar Virkat of the Sayeret Golani, the reconnaissance unit of the Golani Brigade, Colonel Bar Ganon of the Golani Brigade, Colonel Miki Sharvit of the 188th Brigade, Brigadier General Moran Omar of the 36th Division were named in the complaint to the ICC.
All right, so you are watching and listening to Electronic Intifada. I am John Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 699 of Israel's genocidal war on Gaza. I am reporting this on the 4th of September. Let's begin with the maps. As always, I will be breaking down the Beit Hanun ambush coming up. Qassam released footage from the ground of that operation that I had reported on in early July, and we had only had thermal imaging camera footage of that from the Israelis. So stay tuned for that. But let's first understand the context of the battle as it stands right now. And these are the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs maps that I've been using for the last few months. You can see 86.5% is a shoot-to-kill zone in Gaza. And this is going to be an issue as the evacuation from Gaza City, the million people that live in Gaza City, some portion of them are expected to leave Gaza City. A significant portion are expected to remain in Gaza City. But they're being driven out of Gaza City and told to go to areas in the south. But as you can see from this map very clearly, the areas are already full. The white areas on the bottom, towards the bottom of the map, is Al-Mawasi. That is the tent camp that's lined up on the sand dunes. It has no infrastructure, and there's hundreds of thousands of people there. Deir al-Balah has been packed throughout the war. There's not room for people in Deir al-Balah, and so the Israeli military hasn't formally issued the evacuation order for Gaza City, but the preliminary maps show that the Israeli military expects people to go to areas in the south that are covered by those shoot-to-kill zones, that are in those areas that you can see that are under shoot-to-kill, which is separate, as I keep saying, and I want to make sure that everyone is very clear on this. That purple is not area controlled by the Israeli military. We know that. We know that in Khan Yunis, there's a number of pockets in Khan Yunis that the Israelis never took over, particularly in eastern Khan Yunis. But we do know that Rafah is that way. You can see at the bottom of the map, and that map shows the corridor, the Moreg corridor there. But yeah, just to say, these are not areas that Israel controls. These are areas where they shoot to kill anything that moves in that area from a distance, firing at them with heavy machine guns, with tank fire, and that's where the aid massacres exist as well, in those shoot-to-kill zones. So this week, the Israelis have begun the call-up of their reserves. The first reserves began earlier this week. The number is supposed to end up around 60 to 80,000, although the Israelis are being really slippery with these numbers because they know a lot of reserves are not going to report at this point. And the Israeli military has had to redeploy. They're going to deploy the reservists that are called up into the West Bank, into the on the northern border with Lebanon, on the eastern border with Jordan, and they're going to send the standing army, who are in those places I just mentioned, into Gaza. So the conscription army goes into Gaza. The reservists stay out as much as possible because it is a very unpopular war at this point in Israel. The genocide is not unpopular, is nearly universal support for the genocide in Gaza, but the Israelis don't want to fight in this war, and that goes all the way to the top of their leadership. The active chiefs of the Mossad, which is the external security, Shabak, internal security, Amman is military intelligence. Those chiefs and others are all, including the IDF chief of staff, are against the Gaza City invasion. They believe that the 60-day ceasefire that Hamas had on the table for the past month, which was Netanyahu's proposal a month ago, and then he pulled it back off the table playing games because he wants the war to continue. Netanyahu believes if the war ends, that he will be elected out of office and will go to jail for his corruption charges. So there's still a lot to be determined about the exact way the forces are going to be used in Gaza. The resistance has been able to prepare for this battle for more than a year because the first battle of Gaza City ended in early 2024. There was a poll in Mariv newspaper this week that sort of underscored all this, that only 25% of Israelis, Jewish Israelis polled, believe that Israel is winning the war. About 20% believe that Qassam is winning the war. So we know how this is going. The defense minister said that Gaza City will become like Rafah and Beit Hanun. Both areas have been virtually wiped out. And so this genocidal intent by the Israelis is consistent now for 699 days. And also because of the lack of the military's lack of interest in fighting this battle, they have a draft dodgers issue. Yedio Aharonot reported this week that the army and the police will be reinforced not only at Ben Gurion Airport, but also near maritime and land border crossings, looking for draft dodgers who are trying to flee the country. So something to take note of there. So the next map you can see, this is the Israeli version of the map, which you can see is completely different than that the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs map. Still, this is too generous to the Israeli military. They do not control large pockets of Khan Yunis, including the camp and the downtown of Khan Yunis are not controlled by the Israelis. There's pockets towards the east, Abasan al-Kabira, that they do not control. Those were where we saw the bulk of the operations that made June and July the deadliest months for the Israelis in the past year. So this map was posted. You could see the two Hebrew written terms there are the corridors. The bottom one is the Morag corridor, which I broke down on a previous show, and the Magan Os corridor is the one that cuts Khan Yunis there from the eastern to the western. Khan Yunis is split in half, and we know they don't control that corridor because on the show, on our last show 2 weeks ago, I told you about an operation, a 20-strong Qassam commando raid, breaching operation, tunnel-borne breaching operation against the Israeli position in the Magan Os corridor. So they don't control that. But when they published this map, they bragged about 10,000 airstrikes during Gideon's Chariots Part 1, and the Gaza Health Ministry said more than 10,000 people were killed during that time. Israel's trying to say that they have 75% control over the Gaza Strip, but they don't. Those dotted lines that you see, those are buffer zones, and those are the buffer zones that Israel is trying to make permanent. But the resistance has attacked them in those buffer zones, and we're going to see later on in the show the attack in Beit Hanun is in that buffer zone where you see that dotted line on the far right side of the map on the eastern edge. So the bottom right corner of that map, that's Beit Hanun, and that area was the staging area for this pretty remarkable ambush of Israeli troops. Army radio reported yesterday that the IDF admits yesterday morning that that after nearly 2 years of war, there is, quote, enormous wear and tear on manpower and equipment. The IDF will enter Operation Gideon's Chariots B with only 60 to 70% readiness of the heavy bulldozers for the engineering missions. During the war, dozens dozens of heavy bulldozers were damaged by anti-tank missiles and charges and were completely taken out of service. This is actually the first time we've even had dozens be mentioned. It's obviously way higher than dozens, but this is information that is covered by the Israeli military censor. We don't hear how many tanks, bulldozers, armored personnel carriers are taken out of service. So this was the closest we have gotten, and they say 60 to 70% readiness. So they're suggesting that somewhere around 40% of their armored bulldozers have been taken out of the battle, which is consistent with 699 days of resistance reports, where we cover that extensively. This next slide is this was another leak. This is a leak by Channel 12, but this was an IDF leak. This is a booklet of lessons learned from Gideon's Chariots, Part 1, Part A. They haven't clarified if it's A or 1, B or 2, but we'll see in the coming days. Distributed this booklet to all ground forces, and it was given to every training officer in the Israeli military. Every ground force maneuvering division was given this report, and it says, what you see on the screen there says, Gideon's Chariots failed. It didn't defeat Qassam or the Hamas government. It didn't free captives. Quote, made every mistake possible. Gave the enemy resources. They fought a war of attrition without parameters or a timeline. They poorly handled Qassam's guerrilla warfare. But yeah, I think the takeaway point is every possible mistake was made in this battle that the IDF themselves admit they lost. And Haaretz pointed out that among the other shortcomings cited was that troops redeployed to areas where they had previously operated, and IDF combat methods had proved ill-suited to counter Hamas's guerrilla tactics. Now, this is something I've been pointing out on the show since day one. They arrived at the areas that they thought that they had previously taken operational control over, and they thought no one would be there. But as we know, the territorial battalions remain in those areas. So when the Israelis went back into eastern Khan Yunis to Abasan al-Kabira, they were immediately hit by the Abasan al-Kabira battalion of the Qassam brigades. And those surprises come from a fundamental misunderstanding of the Israeli military of the way that the Palestinians fight and the way that they are organized. And I think that that was a remarkable note to pull out of this leaked document. Again, another leaked document. We went 630 days without a leaked document or video. And then in the past 2 months, we get leaks multiple times a week. So it's been interesting to see that internal fight within the Israeli military and political echelon giving us access to these documents that we previously wouldn't see. So the next slide, let's move to the northern Gaza, because that's where the focus of this the show is, and the war is right now. Zaytun neighborhood, you can see that in the southeast of Gaza City. The Shujaiya neighborhood and Tufa, both of those areas to the east of Gaza City were part of Gideon's Chariots 1, and they have massive destruction, near total elimination of eastern Shujaiya and Tufa as well. Beit Hanun virtually wiped off the map, looks like a moonscape. Really, we're talking like post-apocalyptic looking areas in the north of Gaza, all over Gaza, but the north of Gaza in particular. Civil Defense reported the other day that in an 18-day span, 1,000 buildings were destroyed in the Zaytun neighborhood and the neighboring neighborhood of Al Sabra, which is just to the north of Zaytun, essentially the same neighborhood, connected to the same neighborhood. And we saw in Zaytun, as soon as the Israelis went in, we saw that multi-stage ambush by the Nukba elite special forces of the Qassam brigades that I broke down last show. So they were ready for them in Zaytun. And also earlier this week, the Army radio reported and the IDF reported that 7 IDF fighters were injured overnight in a armored personnel carrier that was hit by a IED. So again, just proof that these Qassam operations and munitions are continually penetrating these vehicles. They're inside the cabin, and 7 soldiers were wounded. Sounds like they got lucky. 7 soldiers wounded when a blast penetrates inside the cabin. Can be far more costly than that, as we know, throughout the war. The war began on the second day of the war. Qassam, with a Yasin 105, penetrated the back of an armored troop carrier and killed everybody on board. And it's happened a number of times throughout the war. Let's take a look at number 5, because you can see what's happened to Zaytun here. These are satellite images that cover these two. So August is 8th. That's what you're seeing.
Just a reminder, the Yasin 105 is an RPG. I did not know that you could kill everyone inside of an APC with a Yasin 105 just aimed at the right spot. That's wild.
Seeing right now, for people listening, we look at a map here that looks there's a lot of damage, but it looks like a city. You can make out a city in this August 8th satellite image from the New York Times, from Planet, from the satellite. And then if we flip it to August 25th, it looks like somebody took a massive eraser to it. It's just ashen, gray, and totally destroyed for, like, what is that, 4 or 6 city blocks in a row. Somebody took from the satellite. And then if we flip it to August 25th, Times, from Planet, from the satellite. And then if we flip it to August 25th, it looks like somebody took a massive eraser to it. It's just ashen, gray, and totally destroyed for, like, what is that, 4 or 6 city blocks in a row, just completely wiped out in that period of time, 17 days. So you can see the destruction that's happening. They're not willing to fight the resistance. They want to draft dodge. They want to flee the country, but they have no problem executing this genocide. As Nora always points out in the newscast, if you didn't catch that today, you should go back and listen to her newscast covering the humanitarian impacts of this war. Okay, let's take a look at number 6B here. We have a Sarah al-Quds Qassam joint operation, a good look of tunnel and tunnel formation. You can see the fold in the wall, those turns. Those are what makes the tunnels effective. They're not just straight lines. They're not like a subway line. And here on the wall, you see, you see them there. That's an Aton wheeled armored personnel carrier coming down the hill. They're going to show you a tank on the left there and the Aton on the right of the screen. And they're going to fire a Cornet anti-tank guided missile system at this Aton armored vehicle. There's a poem on the wall on the side I just want to point out. It is a poem from a 12th century Iraqi poet that talks about the nature of keeping prisoners. And it says, when we held power, mercy was our way. When you held power, blood spilled. You deemed it permissible for prisoners to be killed, while we showed mercy again and again. Let this mark the divide between us. That's what Sarah al-Quds has put up on the wall, handwritten poem from the 12th century, to point out at this moment in time, as Palestinian prisoners are being killed in captivity, and while Israeli prisoners in Gaza are big in the news in Israel, that they put those little notices. And we've seen this all throughout the war, where the individual units will put those kind of little marks. We've seen Qassam reading books at various stages that are meant to be significant. We've seen graffiti on the walls of the shot, where the fighters give their chance to speak to the world, and every time they do it, invariably, it's eloquent. It's usually deeply rooted in history and in Palestinian struggle, and it's topical. It's about what's happening at the moment today. So that poem about prisoners is a very salient message at this moment in time. So that is the strike on the Aton. They believe that they've hit the Aton. That's what's burning there, and that's the medevac helicopter. We couldn't get any closer look at that Aton. When the war started, I told you that they were going to use these Atons. I expected they would be used much more than they have been used. We saw them in Rafah during the Battle of Rafah, and we've seen them in the buffer zones. We've seen them be hit by Cornets a couple of times in the buffer zone areas, but they haven't been deep into Palestinian territory in those Aton armored vehicles. They are wheeled vehicles that made their debut on the battlefield on October 7th. They rushed them into service. But it's interesting because they must believe that the Shawad and the Yassin are damaging to those vehicles. That's the only supposition about why they're not using them more in Gaza. So a direct hit. So let's take a look here at number 7. Number 7. This is an elementary girls' school in southern Gaza City. You can see the Israelis are using it as a position. Sarah al-Quds pointing that out. You can see the dust because that's a tank driving in there. You can see the Merkava there in the bottom left. For people who are listening, you're looking at a school building surrounded by destruction, which is all around it. There's a D9 armored bulldozer driving by. So you can clearly see that it's a position within the school. Sarah al-Quds artillery teams here using 60 millimeter mortars that Qassam and Saraya build in Gaza. They also capture these, and they've also smuggled these, but they also build them. And we're going to watch this artillery unit land artillery inside the school enclosure where we see the tanks operating here. So I show you this one because we can see where the where the mortars land, and again, right inside the base. So perfect aim with that. And the Soraya fighter says, we deliver a clear message that must be said from the heart of the battlefield to the enemy who continues to threaten and launch new operations. You have named this latest one Gideon's Chariots 2. We remind you that of the defeat that you suffered in Gideon's Chariots 1 will be the same again, only greater, God willing. You launched an operation called Gideon's Chariots 2, and we begin, by God, to repel it. So they are ready for Gideon's Chariots 2, and they're obviously always very on top of the moment of the news. And we see them sometimes, these fighters, they put the date that the operation took place, they send a message to a martyr, and they're always very up to date on the information. So these fighters in their positions are well connected to what's going on. In military terms, that's called command and control. It's what the Israelis did not have on October 7th, and the reason for the collapse of their forces on October 7th. Qassam dismantled their command and control. So yes, this is, you'll see here, watch the rounds land. Most of these mortar videos, we don't see where they land, but here is a perfect shot multiple times right inside the campus. So these are direct hits, and if a mortar is a direct hit, it's a fragmentation, an area weapon, so it sprays the whole area. So this is an elementary girls' school. Let's look at the next slide. Number 8 here, you can see. So this started circulating about 6 days later on social media. This circulated, and BBC verified it. They verified that this is an army base. That was what BBC verified, put their mind to. It's pretty obviously a military base. I don't think anybody would say it's anything but. If you're listening to this, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. There's 24 armored vehicles, and in the top there's another half dozen engineering vehicles, and they're using the school as a military base. We've seen this all through the war. Schools, hospitals be used as military bases. And then yesterday, if we go to slide number 9, we've also seen them do this throughout the war. They left the base and they destroyed it. They blew it up. They blew up the school. The elementary girls' school is now virtually vaporized by wiring it on the ground with explosives, and they just wipe it out. So that's the genocide part of this military battle, and they do it with glee, with TikTok videos. But yeah, devastating a school. So number 10, I just wanted to bring in, this is the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the DFLP, the National Resistance Brigades. Just want to bring them in to show you. They are using here these TC6 mines. They're not anti-tank mines. Qassam used these on October 7th for vehicles. They put them in place of like Jeeps, and they use them at intersections. And you can see him screwing on the top there. That's the pressure plate that he's screwing on at the top. So these are they don't require an external pressure plate. So the DFLP is setting this up. The Martyr Omar Al-Qassam Brigade is also their name, the National Resistance Brigades. And you can see them moving in, put it into position. They don't have camera on the operation, but you can see here that it looks like they're packing it up right on the edge where the Israelis would bulldoze. And so the bulldozer would hit that. And it's not a single mine. You can see how they've stacked them together. So just a chance to get the DFLP operations in there. They're in here every week carrying out mortar operations. So they're on the battlefield still. All the groups are still on the battlefield. This next one, this is an operation that came from Shujaiya that was released while we were away. This is an operation from July the 7th. This is Soraya al-Quds and the Qassam Brigades in a joint operation. This commander here says, we prepared a complex ambush between Soraya al-Quds and the Qassam Brigades in the area with pre-planted explosive devices. After detonating these explosives, the remaining vehicles that come to the reinforcements, you can see him doing marking it on the paper where the reinforcements will come from. And Qassam and Soraya both predict the route that the reinforcements will come very well. And that's why these operations work, because there's multiple layers that go into these operations. They're not just randomly placed. And the interesting thing about this operation is that it's a joint operation. You can see the fighter there moving with the EFPs. They plant one Shawaz, which is Qassam's explosively formed penetrator, and they also plant one Taqib, which is Soraya al-Quds explosively formed projectile. And you can see them burying it here with their pressure plates. And this fighter says, there's warplanes above us, there's soldiers in front of us in their tanks, and we have overcome all this with the help of God, and we are now preparing a second explosive device in this pure sand of Gaza. If you can always find these videos on my Twitter feed. My Twitter feed is just an archive of these videos, but you can hear the drones. You can hear the drones flying over, and here they're indicating where the tank is driving. You can see it there. It hits and knocks the camera out of the cameraman's hands, so clearly a good explosive device. and they're going to hit another one. And here you see the fighter loading up the Tandem 85. This is Soraya Al-Quds' primary anti-tank weapon, and he's going to head out and hit the tank on the reinforcement path that they predicted. And there he is, just as was predicted. So a well-organized operation in Shujaiya. During the destruction of Shujaiya, the resistance is continuous in all of these areas. And here the fighters climbing through the window, returning to their base safely. Again, interesting to note the way that they're traveling outside with the blankets. We can look at number 12. They travel outside with the blankets like that so that their form doesn't get picked up by AI. We've seen them use a bunch of different ways to cover themselves. But so now we're going to focus on the Beit Hanun battalion and the Beit Hanun ambush. This was on July 7th. It took place. Beit Hanun, you see it in the upper right there of the map, and you see the Erez checkpoint, the exit from Gaza that has been closed for effectively closed to Palestinians for 20 plus years. So it's a very symbolic target. It was a target on October 7th, very symbolically. And the Beit Hanun battalion, who have been told that they have been beaten, they were told they were beaten in November 2023. And we know that they have come with many operations, which we can see in this next clip here. They put a little sizzle reel together of their operations, number 13 here, and you'll recognize some of them. I had to pull out a couple of the sniper hits, but that was the two kills with one shot. These were the massive IEDs during the general's plan. That flipped the tank, that tossed the turret off the Merkava tank and separated it. There you see the destroyed vehicles. And this was the ambush that started during when Israel went back to war. And this was the tunnel-borne ambush that hit them in the buffer zone when Israel was not expecting it, and flipped over that Jeep. Could have been a captured soldier in that situation, but the fighters returned to their base safely. You can see coming up here the turret toss, the medevac helicopters not being targeted, all of the destroyed gear. So the Beit Hanun battalion is announcing its presence here with these operations. And on this reel, they have Hussein Fayyad Abu Hamza, the Beit Hanun battalion commander. They have his quote on there that he said when he emerged after Israel said that they killed him, and he emerged in the ceasefire alive and walking around with no entourage, walking around his community and meeting people who came home during the January ceasefire. So that was a potent little introduction to this operation that was, according to Israel's numbers, there was more than 20 casualties in this Beit Hanun ambush. So let's take a look at that. That's number 14. So you're going to see it's targeting the Netza Yehuda battalion. They are the ultra-Orthodox battalion, and they have been targeted previously. This operation was the 7th of July, the same day as that operation in Shujaiya that I just showed you. There's the Netza Yehuda battalion. They have been hit many times. They were the victims of the double sniper hit. They were the victims of the hit early on when the soldier went feet to the sky through the tank hatch. This is showing where the bombs are planted and where the Erez crossing is. So we're talking right in the buffer zone area underneath. That's an Israeli watch post up there. They have multiple positions along here. So these are under the nose of the Israelis. You're going to see them, the Israeli soldiers here, just doing everything wrong. That was just them spraying ammunition randomly. And it happened that there was a camera beside it. So there's random spray. And look at them all bunched up here, which is not how you should be moving through a battle space. They had just arrived into Gaza 1 hour before. So they're on foot. They had just arrived. They're all bunched up here. And they're about to get hit by a television IED, which is essentially a massive claymore mine that Qassam built, Qassam weapon. You can see it here. It detonates. They use the topography of the land. Presumably they use tunnels as well, but they use the topography of the land. And then here is the footage that we saw right away on July 7th. This is the footage from a thermal camera from the IDF that shows the total chaos. And the IDF has no idea what's going on in this operation. In their field report investigation, they said that there was 10 Qassam fighters shooting at them. There was no Qassam fighters shooting at them. They're both IEDs planted on the route, detonated at the right moment. They were planted 12 hours before this foot patrol came in. For 4 days before that, the military bombs, destroys, airstrikes the area and destroys everything, and they think that there's no fighters in the area. So once that's completed, the Qassam fighters move forward, plant the explosives, and the Netza Yehuda battalion, who just show up on the Gaza border, they walk on foot into this, and they walk into a double strike that hits the reinforcements that go to the area. And this is just remarkable because they tie in there's the second blast, and they'll tie in here the footage from the Israeli thermal camera, which is behind the hill that we can't see. Apparently, according to the Qassam commander, there was a third. See, there it is. There's the thermal camera, and that is behind the hill. So they're actually, the way that the videographer, or the way that they've put this video together actually shows you through the hill that you can't see by, but that's what's going on through that hill. So again, the media ops wing of Qassam doing yeoman's work throughout this war to show us this story. And it's remarkable just how this whole incident took 90 minutes. The Israelis had no idea. They talked about, and then in that last scene, it says not over yet. So that is the Beit Hanun battalion saying, after killing and wounding 20 Israeli soldiers, that the battle in Beit Hanun is not over yet. So that is a remarkable operation. Significant number of casualties on the Israeli side, and they pointed that out. It was one of the largest single events for casualties throughout the war. 5 killed and 14 seriously or moderately wounded in that operation. And just finally, we have here a Qassam poster released the other day that says, "Gaza, the last fortress, stands tall with its people. You'll sooner reach the stars than see Gaza surrender." So that is the resistance report for day 699 of Israel's genocidal war on children, basically, as Nora pointed out earlier in.
Eat a dick, Israel. I'm gonna leave it there. Pretty chill day in terms of news. Let me look at a couple things though. Yeah, there's this. Damn, this is a high school lecture? Oh my god. My high school wasn't shit. Anyway, alright, peace. See you around.